talking about it with my mom. When I put up the categories, I was actually expecting something very different to happen. And, you know, I've done this what's male and what's female thing for 20 years, because I've been teaching and usually what happens is that people start throwing up occupations. What's a girl's job, what's a guy's job, and sometimes we do a house where we separate a domestic situation by gender. I was really interested in how ready the guys were in this on Monday to be like, and girls have long memories and judgmental, and it was really interesting because I have never witnessed that in a classroom before. I've seen it go the other way for sure, with girls being like, guys are uncommunicative and cold, and you know, and all the things that they put out there. The ladies were not quite as ready to jump upon the males as the males were upon the females. I've never seen that before. I think it's cool. You may go, what? Why would that be cool? I think it's cool. I think it's indicative of a change on the wind that I'm very interested in seeing coming. When I talked to my husband about it, remember he's an anthropologist too, and he's a linguist. And so it was like, you know, the typical language words were used, like emotional and strong and all of that. And he said, was video games brought up? And I said, yeah, actually, as it happened, video games was one of the things shot out. And he says, this is where it comes from. Guys, they had their video games. They had their places, their Call of Duty, their Modern Warfare, and all those things. And they have a way of shit-talking to each other that's very comfortable. And then the girls come in, and oh, you can't talk to me like that. So they have a treehouse, and the girls just stomped on into the treehouse and said, you have to let me come into the treehouse. And they're like, yeah, yes, because we're told as boys, you have to let girls do all the things that you do, or you're a bad person. Right? If a girl wants to play football with you, you have to hand her the football. And if a girl wants to go on your guys' hiking trip, you have to. And if you're a Boy Scout, girls can join you. There are got to be some places that are just for us. And I hadn't really thought of it that way before. And he was like, and so we're mad. We don't show up on your shoe shopping trip. Stay the hell out of our Call of Duty. And I was like, ooh, way to gender politize that one there, dear, with the shoe shopping trip. Your Call of Duty military maneuvers. We're buying shoes. And he was like, no, you're a competitive shopper. It's your own kind of competition that you do. It has its own value, but leave us alone. And I thought that was very interesting because, you know, he's definitely a new age sensitive guy. He's not like, he's not that kind of guy. But it was very interesting to hear that response from him. So would you say that that was an accurate reflection?
Yes. Yeah.
It's all right, girls. You can be quiet. Guys? All right, so let's talk about the women's movement, right? Women's rights, women's movement, like anything you can do, I can do. What did it do to your place in society? It took away your role, right? So before World War II, we had very clear domestic roles, right? Females made babies, raised babies. Males provided income for the home. Left, returned, was fed. Their role in raising children was as they decided to. Like they decided how much to participate and how much not to. I read a woman's handbook from just after World War II. It was like, when your husband comes home, make sure the children are clean. Make sure you present the children to him. And immediately after dinner, the children are removed. Let him kiss each one on the head and see what fine children he has before you send them off to bed. And that was, you know, he was too tired.
What year was that book published?
This was in 1952.
I may have the same book as you. We just found it in my great-grandmother's house, and it has some very interesting things on how to keep your man happy.
Right. All of the, because that was your job. right?
Bullshit.
And we all look at that now with this back, with our future eye, and we go, well, that's silly, right? My whole job is to keep my husband happy. F that job, right? Now, I do think of my job as keeping my husband happy, but not in a he's the provider of my home and I must present him with clean children, so much as I entered into a partnership with this person and we made certain agreements and commitments to each other regarding each other's personal satisfaction and happiness. You remember that we agreed we were going to row this boat together until we sink it. And that was the agreement. So I see I do have a job for his emotional well-being, but I'm not entirely responsible for it. But I'm responsible for not pissing on it, right? Like that's where that is. But having removed the classical male job, because what women did during World War II and after was not only did they manage their domestic life, they then also managed a life outside of the home, right? So they showed them, I can do what you're doing and all the other things too. We had to, because once we found our way into the workforce, trust me, any woman who has spent her life being a domestic partner, their job is raising kids and doing dishes and all that shit will tell you it is the worst job ever. It is the shittiest job on the planet. It has no vacations, it has no pay, and there's no time off. And it's a never-ending job. It's like cleaning up after a dog that sheds. Right? You clean a thing, you turn around, you come back, damn it. Right? The elves in your house, also known as your children and your spouses and all of that, keep messing everything up. It's impossible to stay on top of it. So there's no point when your job is done. Now, it is boring. I'm not going to lie to you. Child rearing is so boring. We love our children. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with our children, but literally we spend day after day after day of, do you want a juice box? Do you want an apple juice box? Or an orange juice box? An apple juice box? Do you want some carrots? Do you want much burning? Oh, you want to play house? Okay. Do you want to color? And paint? And play? And then watch television? And then the whole time the kid's like, la 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 la, by the end of the day you're like, right? An adult talks to you, you go, no talking, no how, right? Because it's horrible, it's boring. Well, there are a lot of naps involved. That part I did kind of dig, because when you're a parent, you should sleep when they sleep, because it's the only opportunities you have. You've got to sleep when they sleep. But other than that, it sucks. So I don't blame them for being like, hey, there's an opportunity to get out of here, I am out of here. But then it turned out they couldn't let go of the other responsibility because it made them less womanly, right? A woman who had a job outside of the home but then had a messy home, right? Even now, I'm a doctor, right? I'm a freaking doctor. When people walk into my home and they look around, I know they are judging my ability as a woman. Constantly. It drives me insane. Because I'm like, I'm the only person in this house with 4 jobs. Because I have 4 jobs, right? And I'm also, if the toilet's dirty, my mom goes, your toilet's dirty. Yes, my toilet's dirty. Why didn't you clean your toilet? You knew you had guests coming over. Well, because Mom, I had 35 papers to grade before you walked in the door. Truth be told, and that's because I got halfway through one class. So, I'm sorry, I had other things to do. Oh yeah, and then the coroner's office called them. They had dead people, and, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry. And then you get... They say so much with that, don't they? Right? Now, the males in my house do not agree that I'm being judged. The males in my house are like, no, people are just coming over. And it's like, no, you don't understand the mind of the people who expect me to have this done. And they don't. They simply don't. So, even still, even with all those jobs, I have those expectations of my gender role, right? That I'm supposed to cook and I'm supposed to clean and I'm supposed to do all of those things. Because if I can do all of that, then I'm permitted to work outside of the house. So that's the girl's side of the coin. Now we'll look back at the guy's side of the coin. So now we've said to the guys, anything you can do, we can do it, and we can do it twice as well, and we can do twice as much of it. We are only complete as women when we do a 40-hour-a-week job plus keep a home, right? This is rough to do. But it's also left males with no place to be, right? When a male participates equally in household stuff, what do we say he's doing? He said on the head. He's helping out. Right? When they do the dishes, do they do it the same way women do it? No, it used to drive me crazy. Spencer or my husband or whoever would put a dish in the dishwasher and they'd call it doing the dishes. And I'm like, dude, that's not doing the dishes. That's putting a dish in the dishwasher and don't get a certificate for it. Put the dishes in the freaking dishwasher or find them in the bed. Use your eyes. Yeah. But that's not actually what's happened. In my household, we've actually switched it. My husband is in grad school. He's on his way towards his doctorate, but it's going to take another 8 years. It's going to be a long time. So, who's responsible for house cleaning in my house? It's not me. Nope. That's not Spencer. Sorry, buddy. No, Spencer has his own set of jobs. He's responsible for trash. All trash. He's responsible for getting it into the cans. He's responsible for getting it out of the cans. He's responsible for getting it into the other cans, getting the cans to the curb. Not actually a huge number of responsibilities, I will admit, but that is his level. Tim, who's older, has the responsibility for the kitchen. Because everybody just sort of leaves their dishes as if when the act of eating ended, the next job is to move. And so he takes care of all of that. I still cook. I tried moving cooking off to somebody else, but I found out I didn't like their cooking. So I still keep that one. But my husband's responsible for running the household. He's responsible for telling me when there's no more milk, and he's responsible for making sure everything's clean, and the dogs are walked, and the dogs are fed, and the kids have gone where they're supposed to go, and when one of them is throwing up, not my job, his job. Right, and we made this agreement, and instead of him helping me out, he's taking responsibility for those components. Now, he doesn't tell any of his friends, and we certainly don't tell my parents that this is the arrangement. Why would we not tell my parents? What would they consider his, how would they look at his gender role? They would start calling him Mrs. Gray, right? Start making fun of him, especially my redneck brother, good God. My redneck brother, who was all like, his dinner is on the table at 6:01. Every day, all the time, right? He has a very traditional household. He is the man. But his wife worked all the way up until she retired. Now she's doing that kind of stuff. Before that, 6:01, she was like, where are we eating? Not what am I cooking? Where are we eating? That's a really good answer sometimes, you know? But he didn't lose his place. He still sees his masculinity as being absolutely intact. We have a whole generation now of males that don't know what they're supposed to be doing. When you were little, someone was supposed to be telling you, when you grow up, you'll have a family and you will support them. And these are the things that you're going to do. This is what being a man means. Already by the time you guys were young boys, they were like, when you grow up, you'll have a job. They didn't even say you'll have a career, right? They may have said you'll find a nice woman to marry and together you will work and raise a family. Your critical component in this has been chucked out. So as a result, we have a whole bunch of males who have, well, failed to launch. Where are they launching to? We look at them and we're like, what's wrong with boys? Why are they all staying home? Why are they so lazy? Why don't they have jobs? Why don't they have ambition? Why don't they have this? Shit, what are they supposed to know? What are they supposed to do? What exactly is their ambition supposed to be? So women were very happy about taking over this role, but they left no space for males. So hearing that the last bastions, the last corners of places where they still had a boys club, and the girls are like, no, you have to let me in here too. I totally get why they're pissed. I'd be pissed too. Right? That's the last place where men need to be men, you know, it's a good place to be, right? Call of Duty is where you can say things like, I will rape you, right? And it's okay. No male can, I mean, then you go, oh, like somebody comes over and teabags your head, and you're like, hey! But it's not considered, nobody is calling you a violent perpetrator, right? They're like, no, this is the way that males deal with males. I can tell you the first time I ever saw that, I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, I watched my son run over and teabag someone's head and run away in a game, and I was like, you're 11! You're not allowed to do this! I was like, no first-person shooters. Not only are you shooting people, you are rubbing your digital testicles on people. And this isn't going to raise a good, healthy male. I might have been wrong about that. Harris Spencer, see, I just said it publicly. I might have been wrong about that because actually it was a place where men got to experience what being men together meant. So I'm sorry, guys. I didn't do it. I just want to point out that I've been part of it, but I didn't do it all by myself. I don't know what to tell you about what you're supposed to, what your male future looks like, what a male gender role is supposed to mean. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I guess maybe I shouldn't be the one to come up with that idea, right? Lacking a penis and all, it's probably not my place. But there were men who fought for women's rights, right? There were men who stood up in front and fought for women's rights. I may have to find myself as a woman, although I can't even imagine how strange this is to me, finding myself in a position where I may have to struggle for your rights. I'm willing, I'm down, I'll do it. Because it appears I have more power than you do. Right, this just still baffles me because I did grow up at a time when males still had control over everything, and I fought against male oppression with ridiculous things like covering shit in perfume and proving that somehow girls were here. And I wanted to play football, and they wouldn't let me play football. But they, my dad, who's actually, you know, he's a total hippie. My dad was like, you can't play football, you won't get boost. And that was terrifying to me, so I was like, nope, I won't play. You're right, I won't play. So, but that's not the experience that people have today. I mean, when was the last time you heard somebody couldn't do that because they were a girl? I mean, and they didn't immediately get their face smashed in, right? When was the last time as a girl somebody told you you can't do that, you're a girl? Yeah, no, because our immediate response is, what? Right? I got bigger balls than you, right? But do we allow males the same space? What happens if a male says, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm keeping this job. I want this space. What about protection for male wages? What about protection for male rights? What happens then? What do they look at you like? Yeah, you're sexist, right? And it's just like when white people complain about being white and everybody goes, yeah, whatever, white people problems, right? You got no problems. Well, sometimes they do. So I want you to be conscious and thoughtful about all of this. So we go back to the lecture, but I want you to get that idea because you're going off into the world, my little chickadees. And as you go off into the world, lots of decisions are going to be made based on your gender, much the same as they were made based on your race and your ethnicity. These things are all together. When you decide whether or not someone's capable of doing a job, you wouldn't decide against a female whether or not she's capable of doing a job. But would you decide against a male because you'd rather a female was in it? Let's be fair, folks. And yeah, I don't know what you want to do. I have no idea. And I do not judge you males for having no plans. What plans are you supposed to have? The culture hasn't given you a new, they haven't given you something in substitution. You know, here's a question I have for you. Males, this is only for males. In a perfect world, what's your role? Professional athlete, okay. That's all right. But every male should be a professional athlete? So remaining gladiators.
I don't mean so much as like limited sport. Like I play ice hockey.
Ice hockey, awesome. And you have all your teeth?
Story, like, I got laid out by a girl the other night. Like she full on
Hold on, I need a word in there. Laid out, you mean she made you fall down?
Like I was skating on one of the boards and she comes and perpendicular hits me into the boards.
Ooh, like a male would.
Yeah, like full on, and everyone stands up and they're cheering for her, and I'm like totally humiliated on the
But would you have been humiliated if it was a male?
I don't know, not to that extreme. You know, like
All right.
more expected.
Right, okay. I don't have an answer for you. Because what I started having there is this whole, that moves into a discussion of physical violence and when is physical violence okay and not okay. Like I have the don't hit girls, but I also have don't hit boys.
Yeah, because I don't want to question at that point. Like she full on did not even try to stop her. You know?
What about if we're going to go to sports, what about esports? Esports, video games.
Oh.
You guys are so uncool.
We don't really see that person. You know, and then looking at their face, like, in like the realm of the game. So it's not humiliating. It's not aware of that.
Wait, you felt humiliated because she was a girl?
In a sense,
Yeah, I really can't help you with that.
She's rarely out there, so when they are, and she does something like that, it's like, because there was mannerism on that, there's a type of etiquette to you're talking shit.
Right.
Even how you act, like, way in that, and you don't, it's something that's a non-human lead, she just came out and was kind of cool, like, whoa, but it was more of like, human.
Well, you felt made fun of.
Yeah, I wasn't like physically hurt or anything.
I got my ass handed to me.
Yeah, exactly. She was like,
Yeah. The reason I can't do anything is because I was regularly a girl who handed boys their asses. So I'm trying to think this through from your point of view, and I used to play soccer, football, thank you, and I didn't play football like American football. I played soccer, and I was the only girl on a 75-man soccer team. I was also the only English speaker. So all of my Spanish relates to soccer. And regularly boys would give me crap, but I'm a big white girl. I mean, I'm not big, but I was bigger than them. And so, you know, I get these little recent immigrant Mexican males, and I got a lot of yellow cards. So I kind of get, I'm having trouble getting to the other side here, so I need help. No, actually, there was another contribution. Yes.
I'm not sure if this is on the same basis, but I saw a photo where there's a gamer guy and a non-gamer girl, and she goes, "Ah, that's so lame." And then underneath it, it's a gamer girl with a gamer boy, and he's like, "Marry me." So it's one of those things where if a girl plays the game and she's good at it, they admire her. But if the guy plays the game and he's phenomenal at it, the girls are like, that's not good.
Yeah, no, it's true. Boys are judged negatively because at this point we haven't yet figured out, most of us haven't figured out that you can actually monetize this skill. So when you look loser, but in esports and actual, you know, competitions, these guys are raking in some serious freaking cash. It's not a small amount of money that they make. So, but I can tell you from the girls, or from the person's point of view, my current husband doesn't play, but my previous mate made games. So we were always playing. And I didn't like it at all. But it was because I wanted him to stop looking over there and look over here. Right? Like, it'd be 3 o'clock in the morning and he'd still be playing, and I'd be like, hey, there's this other room we could attend to. Right? And he'd be like, yeah, later. Fun then. Right? So that's from the girl's point of view. It's A, you're never going to make any money, and B, I'm spending an awful lot of time on my own. Right?
But I just thought it was great that if the girl was playing video games, the guy's like, this is incredible.
A real gamer girl is worth her weight. She's a marriageable item. It's true, except that I'm not sure that that's the space I can kind of like give the boys a treehouse, man.
I found that guys, when they're looking at girls that are gamers, they only consider them gamers if they play shooters.
Yeah.
Any other game is not a game.
You are not a gamer if you are brilliant at beautiful calamari. Right? Isn't it a wonderful game? It's a wonderful game! Until I get bored. Actually, I have to admit, it's a stupid game, but it's a fun game. And I'm getting intelligent. I'm kind of a fan of Pokemon. I only played for a few days. My son made me play, and I only played for a few days, but I had to put it down because I was fearful that I was going to stop doing anything else. So I put it down. I'm now in my middle-aged genre. I play hidden object games. Yeah, woo! I play creepy ass ones, but I play hidden object games because I'm in my 40s, and that's what 40-year-old women do. Sad, but there are also men there too. Oh, I find a lot of things creepy, actually, as it turns out. The things that scare me would make me laugh. I'm afraid of maggots. I know, right? But I'm afraid of maggots. Wrong story. I have a really good reason to be afraid of maggots, but I'm afraid of maggots. I am also afraid of clowns. My clown fear is actually totally legit because what it is you guys know that because I'm hearing impaired, I watch your faces all the time for expressions. I'm also awkward, so I watch your face all the time to figure out whether or not what I just said came out wrong, right? And clowns, their faces have nothing to do with what they're thinking or feeling. So clowns are hard, and clowns scare me because there's nothing going on. That's why I don't like them. I don't like masks either for the same reason. Yeah, no good. So, and I'm afraid of heights. There you go. These are the things that are creepy. And a lot of these games, you'll be like going along with someone like, oh, no. So, all right, back to our room. Gender roles are hard. Okay, so in a perfect world, sports. Girls got the hell out of it. All right. Here, I'll start. What about our home life? What happens in our home life? We have an equal role. Do males get their king of the home back?
There are even some couples where like promoting dads to be dads, so spend that time with the child for a while.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's all general or Maggie children right now. It's like
That's what he said. In case you can't hear it, is that he feels that gender roles are in the word you use with equilibrium. I think you mean flux. So they're kind of in this place where anything could happen. I think males participating more heavily in their children's rearing is a good thing. I think they did participate before, but we didn't recognize their contribution because, again, we called it helping out, right? I mean, how many of you did your dads teach you how to do something? My dad taught me how to do a ton, and I have a very traditional dad in the sense of dad made the money and mom stayed home and that kind of thing. But my dad still taught me. My dad was the one responsible for teaching me how to ride a bike. And my dad was responsible for every time I hit the ground with my chin to catch it up. There was a magnet in the ground and also one in my chin, and they came together all the time. I always landed on my face, and my dad was like, don't land on your face, but don't put out your arms either, break your arms. And so the first time I got hit by a car, I tucked my shoulder, and in fact, my dad told me, slow it all down, tuck your shoulder, don't get scared, it'll be fine. And I got hit by a car, I was on my bike. Actually, technically, I hit the car. It was kind of a this, and I was over the hood of the car, and the woman sued our family because I was smiling as I went over the hood, and she found this extremely disturbing, and the reason I was smiling was I had tucked my shoulder, I rolled over the hood of the car. I kind of felt like a superhero. And I landed on the other side of the car. Right? I didn't die! Right? And things my dad taught me. My dad taught me how to fix a car. I kind of feel like I should teach my son to do these things. But I kind of feel like I should teach his, first I would have had to taught his dad how to do those things so his dad could teach him. Yeah, his dad was real smart, real capable. Like, one day we had a light bulb break in the socket, and he was like, oh my God, we're gonna have to call an electrician. I was like, oh no, we did not have to call an electrician. All we need is a potato, and this is a done deal. Let's turn off the power, start there. Cut the potato in half, stick it in, unscrew the light bulb. And he was like, where did you learn this? My father taught me this, and I kind of wanted to go, okay, anybody do this? But yeah, no, it was more than one. Once the door lock broke, and he said, well, we're going to have to call a locksmith. I said, can't you use a screwdriver? And he was like, I don't know where there is one. Right. He always laughed because our gender roles, it looked very, he was a very traditional male, looked very traditional from the outside, but on the inside, like the garage was mine. He didn't mow the grass because he was allergic to grass and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, these are the kinds of anticipated roles we have. It's expected that because I am a woman, I would be a nurturer. But you guys already know how I feel about children. I love child. Singular. One. Mine. When other moms would be like, hey, we should get all the kids together and play, I was like, I'll totally drop them off, I'll see you there. I was not the, let's have all the kids at my house. Once he got to be about, I don't know, 12 or 13, I was like, you want to bring all the kids over? Fine, I will have pizza as your house. Enjoy. But when they were little and they would do things like lead things, or when you had to go to a strange child and be like, do you like the apple juice box or the orange juice box? And they'd go, I'm not the most nurturing person. Even my own kid, he's just growing up and I'm passing him stuff out the door, right? I can't do it. I can't. But that's an expected gender role for myself. An expected gender role for my husband would be like if somebody was breaking in the house, that he would be the guy running down the stairs. We've actually had a fight over this because my husband is a very brave man. But I'm the one trained to use a gun. He'll go running down the stairs carrying a katana. And I'm like, what, are you guys just going to bow first? Is this going to be a whole incident? Are you planning on chopping off his head with a very dull samurai sword, dear? And he's like, possibly. Right? So he goes running down the stairs, like an anime. Right? And I have this whole if you hear something at the door, I want you to be quiet, you go over there, watch me, just stay there. And I start, telling him what to do, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, you stay there. Spencer knows the drill. Spencer has more than once I've been like, you stay there, shh. And then I go downstairs with a gun, figure out whether or not what's the door is dangerous. And then we all go back to what we're doing. But when my husband and I were first living together, before we were married, whatever, judge what you like. It's stupid to move in with somebody you've never, marry somebody you've never lived with. What are you going to find out? You can find out horrible things about them. So we were living together, and somebody was trying the front door, like they were shaking the front door, and I was like, you stay here. And he was like, no, what if you get hurt? I said, the only way I'm going to get hurt is if somebody hurts me because you're standing between me and killing him. So I need to stay here. And I will admit, I was not wearing any clothes. I go running downstairs with a gun, and he was like, no! I think he was concerned that this stranger was going to see me naked. And I was like, that's the last thing the stranger will see. I will kill them, that is all. And he's like, no. Finally, he sat me down, and he was like, I am the man. You are the woman. When the bad guy comes, I kill the bad guy. You stand behind So yeah, we still fight over that kind of stuff because our idea about what our gender roles are a little different. So, anthropologists define play as the expectations of thought and behavior in each culture. Traditional stereotypes. We actually put some of these dominant is an interesting one. Dominant and submissive. Have we given that one up? That males are dominant and females are submissive. Well, both. Mentally, physically. Okay, there's a video that's going around, it's kind of viral, where they did this experiment where what you call it? They did a domestic violence experiment. They had 2 guys and a girl, and in the first run of the experiment, they had the guy yelling at the girl, "Why are you talking to that guy? Why are you talking to that guy?" He grabs her by the arm, he yanks her, he grabs her by the hair. By the time he's hit her hair, everybody who's in the restaurant nearby is basically coming out to stop him. At some point, somebody pushes him, another guy punches him, right? And they do this over and over. Every time the guy aggresses against the girl, just whole waves of people come up and they're like, "No way, man, no way." Then they flipped it and had the girl aggress against the guy. The girl is on a street corner, like wailing on this guy. And I was like, all of these people are very brave because they were clearly very bruised at the end of this experiment. She's wailing on him, and he's just going, "No, stop it. This is not okay. Stop it. Stop it." And she's still wailing on him. People walked by him and laughed at him. Right? She's abusing him, and they're all like, "Oh my God." Like, oh. That's not okay. It is not okay. We all got the message. Boys don't hit girls because they're stronger. Strength's got nothing to do with it. Okay, this is about aggression, right? Girls don't hit boys because you can get away with it. That's not okay. We don't hit. Unless you're breaking into my house and I keep it. We don't hit. We also have these ideas about, the guys are decisive and girls aren't. And if guys are trying to be, if guys are indecisive, then they're suddenly feminine, right? Girls are gossipy and boys are not. One of my best male friends, I always say to him, "You talk to a girl." And why? Because he will talk shit about somebody for 2 hours. He'll just sit there, just talking shit. And for a long time, a bunch of our friends thought he was gay. Because he talked shit. And they, again, had done this. He's acting like a girl, and therefore must be gay. These things are, again, not in enrollment. You think males as being not talkative. This same guy will talk your ear off every time the phone rings. I love him, don't get me wrong, he's my best friend. But every time the phone rings, I go, because I've just lost 2 hours of my life. Right? He's just gonna go on and on. I'm much like the millennials in that I'd rather not spend any time talking on the phone. If we could just text, that's cool. Texting allows me to continue on with my life, get on with my business, right? The only person I want to talk to on the phone is my shmoopy, right? And he doesn't talk on the phone. I call my shmoopy because they're like, "Are you okay?" Yeah, just call and say hi. You're okay? You called. I'm not dead. So we get these ideas that these are associated also with certain abilities. A nurse would be nurturing, right? Males are non-nurturing. I love this sign, man enough to be a nurse. When guys want to be nurses, what do they say to them? Why don't you want to be a doctor? Right? Why would you want to be a nurse? I don't know why anyone would want to be a nurse. For those of you who are in nursing programs, my hat's off to you. I have no idea what you would want to do. That is a shit job. You get no credit, you do all the work. It's a crappy job, but you're good people, so thank you because we need you. But I don't know why you would do it. Right now, if you walk outside the job fair, Pay attention to how the genders are represented out there. The corrections officer, male, right? The police, male. The electricians, male. The teamsters, male. Who are the females? The marketing people, right? Because we're gentle. Because we're tactful. Because we're verbal. I think I like the lady at the Home Depot, but actually I love Home Depot's approach to gender politics. They're just like, nope, doesn't happen. If you are a Homer, which is a Home Depot employee, right? A good one is a Homer, you know, Homer Award. If you are a Homer, you can be a Homer regardless of who didn't tell you. Whatever it is, you work for us, you work for us. And I'm like, that's cool. They don't, if you look at Lowe's, they don't distribute the same thing. Home Depot is really good about gender politics. I spend more money there because of it. Now, what are some other ideas we have about what it means to be women? Hello, right? So here we have, let's take Frozen for a moment. Let it go. Right, let it go, right? She has really gone bitchy, right? She's adorable, right? You finish my sandwiches. And, but does she fight for herself?
No.
No. Who has to save her?
Her sister.
Her sister. But who else is saving her up until then? Sven. You know, Sven. Olaf. Olaf was the snowman. Kristoff, thank you. The guy with the sled. Come on, the one who had the Tool family.
Which one's the middle?
Kristoff. Okay. So he's rescued her. His sister rescues her. Right? And she rescues her through an act of love. Girls do the love. Right? Mulan. Let us take Mulan, because I'll make a man out of you. By the way, one of my favorite teaching moments ever, there was apparently a flash mob thing I didn't know about, but it was awesome. I came in, and suddenly in the middle of my lecture, everyone stood up and started singing, I'll make a man out of you. Tears in my eyes, I did it with them. And I got home, and I told him, I was like, this strangest thing happened in my class. They stood up and started doing, I'll make a man out of you, and he was like, mine too. Oh, now it's not special. But, so she takes the place of her father, right? And they are, you know, she's got this horrible, am I male, am I female, you know, kind of thing going on. We see her as a hero because she took on a man's role. But she still does it like a woman, right? She uses logic. And then Merida. Merida, who says, no one will fight for my hand, I'll fight for my own, right? She shows us a strong Disney princess, but look at her. Right, there's the ethnic identity issue, right? You know, the redheaded ginger who's going to take no shit. And notice the males behind her. There's something very seriously dorky wrong with all of them. Like, they don't present her with a good male as a choice. There is no guy that straight away you'd be like, that guy, that's the one she should be with, right? They've got the one who's, and the, oh God. They're just horrible choices, and so she decides to, you know, be her own hero. Okay, but the whole time she's doing it in a dress with nice long hair, right? Does she still look feminine in this? Oh yes, absolutely. They even emphasized her curves beautifully, right? So sad. Now, when she was in the movie, this is her in her working gear, right? So her elbows are free, which is necessary when you're an archer. She has the ability to expand her shoulders like you would as an archer. Note what they did to her here. They lowered her dress. This was after Disney started selling her as a Disney princess. They improved her, the size of her bosoms. Her elbow here, they have the poofy sleeves that's like that. That's okay, but the only reason her shoulders are free is because her dress is off of them. Her waist has decreased in size significantly. She's also taller. And they have made her hair less poofy. It's easier to make a toy with this kind of hair than it is with this kind of hair. And her dress gets all fancified. A lot of people objected to this. Also, notice how much rounder her face got, how much bigger her eyes got. So a lot of people objected. Now they brought her back into looking much more like herself, much less sexy too. So we know that gender is a cultural construct. When we're little kids, we learn what our gender role is. When I was pregnant with Spencer, while the doctors knew the sex of my child, I refused to know. I didn't want to know. I knew that birth was going to suck. I wanted there to be a surprise. The surprise was to be the sex of the child. But before then, you have baby showers and other festivities related to celebrating the birth of your oncoming human. And everybody was like, oh my God, is it a boy or a girl? And my answer was always, yes. Is it a boy or a girl? Well, don't you want to know? Yes. I want to around the delivery date. I will know for sure. I can get back to you on that. Well, but we don't know what to buy it. What? It's a baby. Babies need clothes. So what did they give me? What colors? Green, white, and yellow. Had I told them the sex, what would I have gotten? Blue or pink if it was a girl, right? And by the way, those colors have changed in our own historical memory. There's a reason that Cinderella wears a blue dress. Blue was considered the appropriate color for girls. Pink was the appropriate color for boys because red is the appropriate color for men. Red, that way when you're bleeding, no one can tell you're bleeding, right? It's sort of like a brown trouser joke. So the red shirt, so that no one would know red was the color of men, and because men, little boys are little men, pink is the watered down version of, yeah, that's why. And then at some point they flipped it, like right in the middle of Sleeping Beauty actually, they flip it. And we learn these kinds of things. What's appropriate? That's a girl's toy. That's a boy's toy. And you'll see what a girl's toy is versus what a boy's toy is, right? Or at Toys R Us. Now, some things, I as an anthropologist couldn't do this to my kid, right? I wasn't going to be like, here are all the things that society says, and I'm just going to put it on you, right? Start wrapping them in the chains of their gender before they're even born. This is what a boy does. This is what a girl does. So I picked all primary colors for his nursery because, kids don't really see color. Primary color, black and white, and red. So red and yellow and blue and black and white. Cows jumping over the moon. No gender associated with that either way. It's a baby. But after he was born, our friends showered him in trucks and dinosaurs and little doctor's kits. And I was like, fine. So I went out and I bought him a baby doll. Right? And I bought him nurturing toys. And I was like, all right, here we go. But you know what? You can't make a kid do anything different than they're going to do. He would take that baby and he'd come to me and he'd say, the baby's crying. And I'd say, oh, what does it need? And he'd say, it's hungry. And I would be like, well, then you should feed it. And he said, no, you're the mom. And I'd say, yeah, but daddies can feed babies too. And then I realized his dad never fed him. Of course he brought me baby. Right? And then he's like, the baby's sick. And I said, oh, we should take it to the doctor. And he'd go, okay. And he'd run away and he'd come back and he'd be fully dressed, doctor, right, ready to go, cosplaying this big. So he comes back and he starts listening to the doctor and listening to the baby's heart and all that, just like, like the pediatrician. He goes, oh, the baby's sick. The baby needs medicine. And I'd say, okay, so we should get it some medicine. And he'd say, mommies do that. Okay. And I finally asked him, I said, what do daddies do? And he was like, this is a baby, mommy. It was like, your question is dumb. I'm handling a baby. Daddies don't enter into it. And I was like, I'm telling your father. Totally gonna tell your dad. He couldn't have long hair. He had a friend who had long hair, really long hair. Unfortunately, dad had named him Judas. Who does that to a kid? He was like, well, I couldn't name him Sue, but I wanted him to have to struggle through life because life is hard. I was like, well, you certainly helped him along with that. That was your plan, you win. But Judas had hair to here. And everybody was like, oh, he's a boy. You should cut his hair. No, everybody goes through that. But Judas, it was his parents that made the decision because they weren't fighting this. Of course, his parents clearly were fighting everything. And we give our kids gendered names, right? Well, some of us got gender neutral names. I got one. I didn't like that. I didn't like having boys that was a girl, right? And what other things do we do? Oh, the other kinds of activities. Little boys are encouraged to do what?
Play sports.
Play sports, right? Little girls are encouraged to play
House.
Go down the toy aisle. You can play beauty shop, and you can play cooking, and you can play dress up with your dolls. You go down the boys aisle, there's all kinds of cool shit on the boys aisle. They have robots.
Toys.
Right? They have the best Nerf selection ever. Like Nerf guns that are almost magical. And they have like Legos and all this great stuff. And girls have Barbie, right. It's not okay. So, but that's we're giving the message to our kids. My son had already gotten the message that boys don't play with dolls by the time he was 2. And I certainly didn't give him that message. But he had it. I even tried a couple of times, like, hey, do you want to play, like, brush each other's hair? And he was like, no. And I said, but you have such nice hair. And he was like, I don't like brushing. It was gone. But he didn't like being dirty. That was one thing. He did not have the classic boy thing. If he got his hands dirty, he was like, ah! Until they were clean. It was hilarious. So I didn't have to do a figure painting. I'm like the only mom ever who got away with a fingerprint-free childhood. Because he just wouldn't do it. He put paint on his hands and he'd cry. So, yeah. Now, we tend to make our kids see gender the way that we see it. What happens if you raise kids in a gender-free environment? We don't know, because it's never happened. Well, you'd have to like put a kid in a box with no other kids. You couldn't let them watch television. You couldn't let them have friends. You couldn't even let your relatives come over, because your relatives do that kind of stuff. Do boys get to cry? No, they do not, right? What happens if you have a male child and your male child springs a leak on a regular basis? Man up, right? Spencer was crying over something totally reasonable, and my brother looked at him and goes, dude, man up. And I turned around and I went, shut up. My brother's big, so shut up. And he was like, what, you gonna raise him to be a pussy? And I was like, I'm gonna raise him to be female genitalia? Is that what you're saying? You're saying it in a negative context. So you're saying female genitalia are negative? Are you gay? Well, I should have slowed down. That was a quick mental circle for my brother. He moved real slow. And he was very, very, very slow. Right? He is not like that. He's a redneck boy. Actually, the truth is he's quite bright, but he hides it from everybody. I didn't figure out he was smart till he was like 50. And then I realized he's a secret reader. Like, he knows a whole bunch of stuff, but he always does the big dumb brother thing. And so when he said that to my son, I was so angry. I was like, he's 5. He can cry if he wants to. And he was like, he's just going to cry a lot more if you let him. I'm going to let him. Right? Fiercely defend my kid's right to cry. But, do you think everybody else fiercely defended that kid's right to cry? No, I couldn't control every aspect of his life, right? I couldn't follow him everywhere and be like, you stop it! Stop enforcing your gender roles on my child! He gets to be who he wants to be! You leave him alone! Because that would have been too crazy shot, right? Like, there was nothing I could do because it just keeps being this self-reinforcing gender role, right? This cultural norm. And there were a couple of times he certainly enjoyed it. Like in preschool, I walk into the bathroom and he and 3 other little boys are standing in front of the urinal, hands on hips, all peeing into the urinal. They are, of course, been towards as a general thing. It looks more like, you know. And I walk in and I'm like, what are you doing? And there was a dad at the end of the line. He's like, I'm teaching these boys how to pee like men. And I was like, I'm not okay with this. And he goes, nobody's touching anything. It's all fine. I was just saying. Be men. And I was thinking, yeah, no, the reason I'm not okay with this is he's going to come home. He's going to be like, no. It's going to be a giant mess. And how am I going to fix that? Right? Even if things are going back, what do you do when you have a kid? Gender roles are part of this. Remember on the first week we talked about where do boys go in a restaurant? What happens if you're the other parent? You're trying to gender enculturate your kids. What do? You boys will have little girls. Daddy's little girl. Right? What if somebody tells Daddy's little girl that she has to sit with her legs crossed like this? Because that's the way a lady sits. I think she's pretty much treated like she would sit out her wants. Is she sitting on her head? No. So, this is an anthropologist who was looking at masculinity in a U.S. high school, like what was defined as masculine. In high school, it already starts in junior high, but in high school and in the very, very beginning of first grade is when we see men, boys, really pushing forth that masculinity. It's like they go through waves of it. First grade is really bad. First grade is terrible. Because that's when they're with a bunch of other boys in the company of a bunch of other girls and they're showing you what they know that I'm a boy, right? So they're very funny at that point. But in high school, they do this other thing. What Pascoe studied was what she called fag discourse. And what that is a form of gender role policing with each other. If you don't behave a certain way, you get called a fag or you get called gay or whatever. And they'll even do stuff that we would consider non-heteronormative. In other words, practice what we would consider homosexual behavior in an effort to show that they're not homosexual. We like to call it gay chicken. Right?
How do you think divorce affects the fag discourse instead of like in the movie Fight Club, he was like, we're a generation of men raised by women, why do we need a divorce? Or something along that line. So I'm wondering how like that divorce would affect this fag discourse, like a young man raised by a single woman.
Actually, there have looked at studies with, how does being raised by a single woman affect a man's masculinity, and it doesn't seem to. We see both hyper-masculine and hyper-non-masculine males, both heterosexual and homosexual males. Your mom's important, don't get me wrong. Your mom is critical to your development, and your dad is important too, but what's also important are all the other people around you. And divorce is the separation of one couple. But there are still aunts and uncles and brothers and all those other people who participate in your formation of your masculinity or your femininity. And high school is a place where that becomes really, really obvious. I took exception when Spencer's friends would say, that's gay. And I was like, do you mean that in a pejorative sense by that's gay? Do you mean that's something bad? Because you're referring to a whole group of people and their behavior in a negative sense. Do you mean that's bad? And Spencer was like, shh, Mom, stop it. And I was like, no, I want you to stop using that's gay. That's not cool with me. I would listen sometimes, though, on Spencer's friends' conversations because he would pocket dial me regularly. And so I could listen to him and his friends talk, and he did it all the time. I was, I guess, first on his phone list, so I would get pocket dial. And, or the last person you called or whatever. And I'd sit there and listen to them. And they'd use this term that I thought was really weird. They would say, no homo, no pedo. No homo, no pedo. Eventually I asked him, I was like, what is no homo, no pedo? He was like, oh, well, we could be be okay with each other, and we were indicating we were not gay or pedophiles. Like, we could joke at each other, and we were not being gay or pedophiles. And eventually I got down to, oh, actually what they're trying to do is their environment's hypersexualized. And all of these kids were still really interested in being kids. So they were removing the hypersexualized conversation from where they were. But it did affect their gender identities. It did affect how they looked at each other. And they were really mean to each other, other than that part. So if you weren't sufficiently masculine in this study, you would be called fag. If you cried, and you've all seen this in movies, if you haven't seen it in real life, right? A guy cries over something and another guy calls him fag, right? A guy doesn't engage in sports or worries, is clean, overtly clean, right? Oh, now you're a fag, right? But what the study was interesting was it didn't actually have anything to do with orientation. It had to do with gender identity, right? How people, gender expression, not gender expression, what they put out there to the world. So as long as they were masculine, even when they knew a student was a homosexual male, they wouldn't call him fag. But they called any male who did not participate in the gender normative behavior as a fag. So, kind of interesting. I love this. Gender roles, not gender roles. So masculine behaviors reinforce through sanctions. I'm sure all of you can think of an incident or a moment in your own scholastic career where people did this to you, right? I cut my hair short, they called me dyke, right? A guy, this poor guy in my high school, he cried really easily. Like, he was a very emotional man, and he was very empathetic. Like, he'd see someone else hurting, who's also a musician, but he'd see someone else hurting, and his eyes would well up, and he'd say, I'm so sorry for your pain. He was such a gentle person. And everyone was like, back. And one day I was in the music class, and I was like, are you gay? And I mean, it's okay if you are, just, are you? Because I thought he was cute. And he was like, no. And I shouldn't be thought of as gay because I want to have a better world. And I was like, you're right. And this guy walks by right after he says that, goes, bang. And I was like, wow, okay. Definitely they're, cutting in and reinforcing his behavior. I will tell you that in the long run, I'm still friends with this guy. He is now gay. But I don't think this is related. But he was not gay at the time, and he was actually eventually my boyfriend for a minute. About a minute. We have shorts in So Google looks at machismo, which is masculinity in a culture that values masculinity very strongly. So we're looking at, in Mexico City, what machismo looks like. Now, what Google found it really hard to figure out was, what exactly was machismo? Like, they knew it existed, but defining it, like where the borders were. So, even if guys were doing something in public, they may have been doing something different in private, and they weren't considered less masculine for it. So machismo, my wife does all the cooking, my wife raises all the kids, my wife does that, and then they go and look in the home, and he's actually participating equally. But he hasn't lost any face as the result of it. So it's contextual. It's okay for this guy to carry his baby, but if he's hanging out with the guys, if suddenly it was all of his friends he drinks beer with, the baby's gonna go to the woman because he's now fully masculine. I had the interesting experience of being called out on my gender expression in Mexico. I was dating a Mexican archaeologist who definitely had the machismo thing down. However, he was a fabulous interior decorator. He really, really could decorate like with almost no budget, nothing, just to, because when you rent an apartment in Mexico, it's often a concrete block apartment, and you have hooks on the walls to put your hammock up. You know, it's like, that's the furnishing. There's these rings that you can hook your hammock up to, and that's it, that's your furnishing. Good to go. And I was renting an apartment, and I walked in, and I was like, oh, God. You know, there's like, oh, window, it's got bars, it's this big, and I'm like, that's great, I'm gonna die in here. All right. It was like, you know, I'll be back in a few minutes. He comes back with like rugs and vases and all this stuff, and it looked great. And it was like 20 minutes later, and I was like, you would have a career as an interior decorator in the U.S. And he was like, hey, you know, my language wasn't good enough to like really get that across the phone. He was like, oh, no, those people are gay. You can't, I don't know. No, that is gay. And I was like, that's not gay. Look what you just did it. And he was like, no, that wasn't gay. That was caring for the household of my woman. Oh, okay. So we go out dancing that night in celebration. I wear flat shoes, right? And I start going out the door, and he goes, what are you wearing? And I said, what do you mean? He says, you can't wear flat shoes. I'm taller than he is. Of course I can wear flat shoes, right? And he was like, no. Women, adult women, wear heels. So we're going dancing. I want to dance. And he says, yes, you will dance in heels. You can't go out like that. That is acceptable for women who are gay or who are children, which are you. So they stop and get high heels on the way to go dancing because he wouldn't accept that. He didn't want other men to see him associated with a woman who wore flat shoes. This is from the same guy who that afternoon, beautiful faces, really nice. All right, we're almost done. So, of course, American women are going to express their gender differently depending on the context, right? This is going to be in dress and appearance. If I am home, do you think I'm running around in high heels and a makeup and all that stuff? Earrings. No, when I am home, it is cargo shorts and t-shirts. It is tank tops and flip-flops, right? Because I am home. Home is my comfortable place. I wouldn't even go to Target in that, though, because it's not a feminine adornment. I will go in pajamas, but I won't go in cargo shorts. It's the funniest thing. So we argue that it's not, gender in itself is not a fixed thing. It's a fluid thing, and our active expression is going to vary, right? Like if I'm working for the coroner's office, I don't see it weird that I'm wearing my square bottom pants, right? So we make choices about how we express our gender identity. Let's go back to Monday for a second when I told you about that ally training and the rest of my colleagues putting me in the way masculine category. And the way that the reason they did that is because of something called gender expression, right? How I dress, how I talk, how I respond to gender expression. And they saw that as less female than male. Now, what if we're going on a date with the opposite sex? Are we going to highlight or downplay our gender expression? Right, we're going to accentuate it. Why are we going to accentuate it? Because we want to be attractive, right? We want the other person to see us in that gender identity. And of course, we have a lot of pressure to conform to that. And the pressure, of course, goes on through our entire adult life. I have, within the coroner's office, been told I was not feminine enough. And yet I get crap for being a girl. So if I participate in male behaviors, they're going to call me names. If I'm too competitive or assertive, I get called a bitch. Right? If a guy is not competitive or assertive, he gets called pussy. Right? These are all girl names, by the way. All right. Matthew Goodman's research in Mexico indicates that one almond